Ask questions for you.
Oh, so
we win.
So the best questions got.
They chose from your questions.
Yes.
Nice. That worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I just got really.
So much for softball questions.
Exactly. That's
Vous
worrisome.
avez des questions difficiles donc.
Now, where's everybody from?
D'où est-ce que vous venez tous?
Actually, we should just go around the room.
Yeah, we should go around.
And you say your name and where you're from.
I'm from Paris.
Yeah?
Oh, okay.
Normandy.
Normandy.
I'm
Oh, okay.
in Normandy. My name is Melissa and I come from southern France, Lyon.
Nice, cool.
My name is Kevin from Bretagne.
Nice. Very good.
My name is Elodie, and I'm from Paris.
My name is Karen and I'm from Paris. I'm Melka and from Paris.
I'm
jealous. Violaine, and I'm from Lyon. I am Cindy, I am from Orléans.
I am Célène, live in Paris, from Guadeloupe.
Hi, I'm Julien, and I live in south of France, Nimes.
Yeah.
You up?
Don't be shy. I'm Anthony and I'm from Paris.
Rob, where are you from?
Hi, I'm Rob and I'm from a small town outside of Los Angeles.
Small town.
Claremont.
Thank you.
Steven.
Stephen Coletti, and I am from California.
Whereabouts?
Exactly.
Born in Newport Beach.
I'm Austin. I'm from Texas.
Where in Texas?
Austin, Texas. I was born in Michigan. Now I live in Los Angeles.
Nice. I'm Mark. I was born south of Chicago in Illinois and grew up there. And I've been in LA for 20 years. But it's funny, when you're in Los Angeles for 20 years, you still don't call it home. I always say I'm from Illinois.
Yeah, I've been there almost 14 years.
And Texas is home.
Yeah.
Right?
Il dit qu'on a beau vivre à Los Angeles pendant 20 ans, c'est toujours pas la maison, on se sent toujours pas chez soi. On va avoir de la pluie. Totally.
Ça va.
On va faire ça. Une question, je sais un peu drôle. Ensuite, on fera
You're first.
Il aime bien tes bottes.
Pour Robert. Votre rôle dans la série a énormément évolué au cours de celle-ci. Et le dénouement de la vie de Claire est vraiment surprenant. Vous attendiez-vous à une telle chose de la part du scénariste?
So your role in the series has evolved a lot about your presence in the series. Did you expect this from the writing? Did you expect how your character would turn out? No. No. The way the role was sort of sold to me was he was going to be this, sports agent, womanizer, playboy, like James Bond without the espionage. Cut to 2 seasons later, I'm sleeping on a merry-go-round and buying drugs in my sleep. So no, I did not see that coming at all. But that was one of the things that made Tree Hill so fun is that you really didn't know what was going to be coming up for your character. So Mark and the writers did a good job of keeping it exciting.
Okay. Donc non, effectivement, il s'y attendait pas du tout, puisque au départ, on lui avait présenté le rôle comme un peu un dragueur, un playboy qui faisait du sport, qui travaillait là-dedans, et donc qui avait beaucoup de succès avec les femmes. Une sorte de James Bond, mais sans le côté espion. Et au bout du compte,
Killed in English.
Kill. Il dit que la blague était bien meilleure en anglais, ça marchait beaucoup mieux en anglais. Et donc au bout du compte, il s'est retrouvé à dormir sur un manège et à acheter des drogues alors qu'il était endormi. Enfin, des histoires un petit peu plus bizarres que ça, mais c'est ça qui est sympa avec la série, c'est qu'on ne s'attend jamais à ce qui va se passer. Et donc Marc et toute l'équipe des scénaristes font en sorte que ça reste intéressant et que ça reste passionnant tout du long et qu'on soit toujours surpris.
I will also say that I think that we had a freedom to take the characters to certain places that would sometimes seem challenging or absurd because we had a trust factor involved and we had really good communication. that I think all these guys and everyone on the cast knew that they could come to me with anything, any of their concerns, anything that they felt was inappropriate or confusing, and we would talk about it, and I would have a point of view and respect their point of view. So I feel like that allowed us to go to some great places with the characters and to challenge the actors because there was a built-in trust, I would say.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
Et donc ils avaient, comment Marc, du point de vue des personnages, avaient une certaine liberté pour leur faire un petit peu ce qu'ils voulaient parce qu'ils s'entendaient très bien avec toute l'équipe, il y avait une bonne communication. Les acteurs n'hésitaient jamais à venir lui parler de problèmes qu'ils rencontraient, ils en parlaient entre eux, chacun avait son point de vue, et donc cette bonne entente leur donnait une grande liberté de faire ce genre de choses, et c'était très bon pour les personnages puisqu'ils pouvaient leur faire des choses surprenantes, des choses qu'on ne s'attendait pas, grâce à cette confiance qui s'était installée au sein de l'équipe.
Sure. Yeah, just a couple pieces. Thanks.
J'avais pas besoin de traduire leur réponse. Ils faisaient juste les questions quand on les pose en français, mais ils comprennent
Tout le monde?
Non, vous pouvez traduire. C'était mieux pour
Si
ma
vous voulez que je
vidéo.
traduise un truc, si vous comprenez pas quelque chose, demandez-moi.
D'accord.
Mais précisez juste s'il y a un truc.
Ok.
So my question is,
Make sure you put this on, like tweet this.
There you go. Just came up on a amazing
Gotta get a
Look
picture
at
of
that.
that.
That's a badass.
Our fans are the best. Get it? Double.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's going right online.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so my question for Steven. So your character changed a lot for the seasons. We see him as a student, as a pilot of Air Force, as a German. Which storyline did you enjoy playing the most?
That's a good question. You know, first off, they were all very fun and exciting. And testament to Mark, his creativity over here. We call him the mastermind. That's what you see at the end of all the shows. Mastermind logo, real quick. Little company right there. So I would say I thought the Air Force storyline was pretty fun. You know, it's fun to kind of get into the uniform and study, you know, about the military. This is like the furthest thing from me.
Just got that.
I'm gonna create a show where Steven just sits and fans himself and tells stories and anecdotes.
I'm a little under the weather too, so I'm dealing with allergies. So you know, it's
fantastic.
like just sweating everywhere. But anyways, the airport part was fun for me because then we got to learn more about the military, things I didn't know before, just details that you wouldn't know unless you were in the military. And you know, some of the stuff like when Mia got to perform in that airport hangar, and you know we had that chat after she performed, and we were sitting on on the stage. It was a different setting than what you're used to with Tree Hill. So it was something that was pretty unique, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And it gave me a reason to shave my head, which if I had a shaved head right now would be nice because it would be so hot. Instead I get all this hair baking my dome.
Steve was also worried about that haircut. I directed that episode, and we sent him off to the hair and makeup, and it was a big deal. Everybody was worried, and
Looked
et
good.
cetera, et cetera. And
No,
he
it was
looked
fun.
great. Looked really good.
My mom killed me.
Looked great.
It's a good question.
Oh, I won't mention saying because I can't get all understand English more or less.
Oh.
So I'll just say whenever
You
they.
guys can all understand everything? Okay?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Jenna?
Thanks, I've got it.
Alors ma question est pour Austin. Après l'accident avec Davis, on a vu une autre facette de Julian. Donc je voulais savoir comment il s'est préparé pour sa storyline la plus tragique.
Answer it, Austin.
I kind of got some of it, but tell me.
Okay, after what happened with Davis, there was kind of a darker side to your character. And how did you prepare? How did you go about for this storyline?
You know, I really love the way Julian started and his whole life on the show, because in the very beginning, Julian showed up with like the way he looked this kind of like shaved head, and he was a little scary, and everybody thought he was a bad guy, and he had these ill intentions, and he came back to steal Peyton and all this stuff, and it turns out that's it was a really I love the way that you wrote that and made him appear to be a villain, and then it turned into we saw that he was a kind, good guy and fell in love with Brooke.
Well, I think historically, and then you can finish the thought. I think historically, I realized that you could present a type to an audience because audiences are so familiar with storytelling that they see a type and they fill in the blanks. And so if you look at our show, most of the time that we introduced a villain, they became heroic. And you would introduce them and they go, I know what he's all about. He's come back, he's cocky, he's arrogant, he's gonna try to steal Peyton. And it made it easier to take a character like Julian and say, let's just present this type. People will be familiar with that person, at least they think they will be. And then we could start to shade and change and evolve the character.
Yeah.
And I think that's the choice we made with Julian. And then when he helped Brooke, when she was looking for
Samantha.
Sam was looking for Sam, and then you go, wait a minute, there might be a good guy in here somewhere.
Well, I call that like the Don Draper, thing. That he always he's a kind of a dark dude, and he does things that are bad, but you always, in the end, you're rooting for him. He's an anti-hero. I always got messages from fans on the internet or whatever saying, when you first came to Tree Hill, I hated you. I thought you were horrible, and now you're this great guy. And I always felt like because it started that way, it made it even more powerful. Because if he'd have shown up as, and I'm going to answer your question in a minute. This is sort of just me getting there, but I love that. I think it made it more powerful in the end because of the way it began.
It wasn't one note.
Yeah, and it was all him and really well drawn. And but to answer your question about season 9, Mark, we've had lots of conversations about this. Julian got, and there's nothing wrong with it, but Julian got real soft with Brooke, and I love the comedy. I love chasing butterflies, and I love the dog suit and the high five, and those things ended up being, for the fans, some of the most memorable things. As far as I can tell, like people send me messages and they say I love the Julian high five and all these things, and they're very memorable. So I cherish those. But when we got to season 9, Austin as an actor was boiling underneath, and I wanted to sink my claws into something.
Most young actors want to die on camera.
Yeah.
They want to do something
pull our
big
guts
and
out.
Profound, and
yeah.
Exactly.
And I talked to Mark and stuff about that, and then he said, "We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it." And he said he has a big plan for the season 9, and all those things. You have twins, and you're newly married, and you don't know what you're gonna do about your career, and all of a sudden you make this horrible mistake. And have you guys all seen season 9?
Yes.
Okay. And then you leave your kid in the car in the heat, and
there's that Wall Street Journal article.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
Or Washington Post article. There was a Nobel Prize winning article about parents who had made this terrible mistake, and how these seemingly simple lives and these something that's so human had of course affected the rest of their lives, and it was painful to read. And I remember giving that to Austin, and I just said, just read this and you'll understand the level that we want to go to.
Yeah.
And I should also say that season 9 started with these moments, at least, and especially for these 3. Clay was screaming at Quinn. Your character was being arrested. And you were getting beaten, and all the actors see the potential in that, just like the fans do. They're like, this is gonna be good. I know I'm gonna have good stuff. I don't know when it's coming, but I know that this little vignette speaks to a level that I'm gonna get to play this year. And I think that everyone we were all protective of season 9 anyway, because it was the last season and we knew it. But I think that each actor saw that they were gonna have some good stuff.
It was the first time it was a teaser, not just for the audience, but for us as well.
Yeah, as I say, we had you read that first script and it was like, first thing I wanted to do was like go talk to Schwan and be like, dude, what's going on? But then you kind of you reel back a bit and you're like, you know what, it's gonna be fun to just go on the ride and read each script as they come and start, see what happens. So you kind of at first instinct you want to be like, well, dude, what's going on? What's happening with everybody? But then you kind of sit back and realize it's better to just take it slow and just let it kind of surprise you when you read it the first time.
And every season I would sit with the actors for a little bit before the season and say, here's what I'm thinking. Like, here's where I want to go with your character. What do you think? And we would have a conversation about it. And sometimes they would say, I don't want to, I'm comfortable, and I'd try to convince them to do it.
Joy.
Or I would say, okay, what about this? We would negotiate a little bit depending on the trust factor. Because some actors are selfish and they just want what they want, and they don't want what's best for the character. They just want what's best for them. And it's not a great place to work from for the story or for them, I don't believe. But we had very few of those on our show.
Actors are not writers, and like so many of us think we are, and we think we know what the right thing to do is, and so often have no idea what they're planning is actually going to be better for us in the long run. Actors don't see sometimes down the road,
and I also say, I remember when Brian Greenberg, in season 1 or 2, he played Jake, and I remember I had written this huge monologue for him with Peyton, and he didn't want to do it because he thought it was cheesy. And it was the moment in her bedroom doorway where he said, I could have held you forever and it wouldn't have been long enough. And he didn't want to say that line. And he was like, it's cheesy. It's like, and I said, yes, it is cheesy and it's fantastic. And if you commit to it and really try to sell it, it'll be one of your memorable moments on the show. And he did it. And it turned out great. And most fans remember that moment. And the fans that loved Jake and Peyton remember that. Later on, I wrote this big monologue for him. And he said to me, and I had worked on a movie with Brian as well, and he said, couldn't I just do this in like a look? Or couldn't I do this in like one sentence? And it was all these words, and I had written them. And I said, you know what, you're absolutely right, let's try it. Because I knew that Brian it wasn't his ego. He cared about the character, and I respected his point of view. And he respected mine, and he had given me stuff in the past that he didn't want to do. And so I was listening to him, and I realized it wasn't him just being selfish. It was his point of view, and I respected it. And fortunately, I don't think I was directing that episode, but I was there, and I said, let's just try it. Let's just get rid of all this and just try doing it. And it was great. So it's a long-winded way of saying that, on our show, we all got along really well. And when you work for 9 years, you have the ability to sort of mold a troupe of actors into the people who love it as much as you love it and want to be there as much as you want to be there, and then it's fun and it's rewarding and easy. And as these guys were saying, I didn't every year I would collaborate and sit down and tell them, and this year I just said, let's not talk about it, just you'll get each script, and just like the fans, you'll be able to take that journey each week and be surprised, and then we can talk. Like, once you read the script, if you want to talk, great, but I don't want to tell you what's coming. And it was so much fun this year because they got to experience like the fans do. And I would get these great emails and texts and calls going like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, or whatever. And I was like, isn't this good? We get to experience the show like everybody else. So it was a really good season for a lot of reasons. That was a long-winded answer.
Oh gosh, sorry.
Anthony?
That's right.
Please. Yeah.
Great.
J'ai une question pour Marc. Donc, de quoi parlait le pilote de Shelter?
So what was the pilot for Shelter about?
The what?
The pilot for Shelter, apparently.
Oh, Shelter. It was about an inn in Maine, in the state of Maine, which is kind of quaint and bucolic. You might have to translate some of this.
What does bucolic mean?
It's a little slice of paradise, an inn that has been there for 100 years. This was the pilot that I wrote that didn't get picked up, so you'll never get to see it. But it was a group of young people who would work there in the summer, and they would run the inn. Some of them had grown up there and were from that place, and others had come from all around the country and the world. And some of them had history. They had worked there in the past. Others were new. I thought it was a great setting for, in One Tree Hill, if we introduced a new character, we had to have a backstory for the character. We had to have a reason for them to be there. And if they were going to leave, we had to have a reason for them to leave. And what I loved about doing a story about an inn or a hotel is guests can come and go every week and drive your story. So you've got your main cast and their romances and their stuff, but the guests could come and go and impact them every week, and there was a reason for them to be there and a reason for them to leave. And the stories were limitless, I thought. That pilot script was excellent. I wrote it. But it was.
I read it. It was very, very good.
Yeah, I think all you. Well, Rob, you didn't read it, did you? Stephen read it.
We were actually.
I really liked it.
I remember being so used to, his writing for One Tree Hill, and was curious to see what it was going to be like reading something else from his. I think I'd read one of his features before, but I remember reading it.
Yeah.
Letting know right away. This is great. It's going to be good.
It was really good, and by the time we shot it, it was not as good. And there's a process of erosion that takes place that I told everyone while it was taking place.
Just the bosses ruined it.
Yeah. It's
it's not his fault.
It's funny. It's a little bit of everyone wants to contribute an idea, and everybody wants to have their fingers on it. And sometimes it's executives, sometimes it's your producing partners, sometimes it's the actors, sometimes it's me. Everybody wants what they want, and at the end of it, it becomes, I always say a camel is a horse built by a committee.
Mm-hmm.
So you start off with this beautiful horse, and then the committee gets a hold of it, and then at the end it's kind of this ugly camel. But you could still ride it, but you can't win any races by riding it.
Yeah.
And it was okay. It turned out, I'm proud of the actors, and everybody tried, but it wasn't that great. And quite frankly, I felt like it wasn't better than One Tree Hill. And the next thing I do, I would like to try to do a little better, so it's okay. Rob's going to work soon, I know. Rob's got a job, the rest of us are unemployed.
Olive Garden.
Rob,
Do you have Olive
master
Garden?
waiter. Master
Well,
waiter.
yeah, I got a topical joke here.
Is there a restaurant?
What's a
called
restaurant
Olive
chain
Garden?
around here?
No, we don't. C'est un chaîne de restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I have a question for the next TV show. Can you just tell us more about the character and the story?
Sure, you mean a 666
Yes,
Park Avenue?
Yes.
Sure. Well, it's an hour-long program. It's kind of a sci-fi thriller. And it's Sunday nights on ABC at 10 p.m. I play a character of Brian Leonard. He's a struggling playwright, and his first play that he wrote was a huge hit, and since then they've all been duds. So he's really struggling with that. His wife Louise is a fashion photographer, and they're two of the residents at this building called the Drake. And what you kind of come to find out in the pilot is the building is owned by it's the guy who played John Locke from Lost, Terry O'Quinn, who is essentially the devil. I'm not allowed to say that in interviews, but let's just say, maybe he fell from heaven and God wasn't a fan of him. So anyways, but everyone at this building at one time or another in the future signs a deal with this guy, whether it's for something they want in their career or in their love life or in their personal life, whatever it is, and he can make anything he wants happen for these people. But the problem is it's a 10-year contract, and once that 10 years is up, your time is up, and you're a goner. And so in the pilot, you see a guy who has achieved kind of his dreams and goes bye-bye. So you watch my character. I'm adding to my list of acting skills full-on pervert. because I creep out on the hot blonde across the street. Apparently, that's all you see of me.
That's what you want?
What's that?
Is that what you want, or do you want success, or do you want all that?
By the time you meet Brian, he hasn't gone to the guys for anything. I think if anything, he's gonna go for career stuff. That's my guess. But
Because if he gets career stuff, he can get the blonde across the way.
yeah, well, in the pilot, you'll see things get very interested. Worlds get small, and so yeah, so it's very, very sexy, spooky, fun. Watch it. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Pour Stéphane, pour savoir comment il a perçu son amitié qui liait celle avec Chuck en fait, Chuck et lui.
So what's your take on the relationship you're acting with Chuck? What's it might be about?
My take on the relationship, it was. So it's, I mean, take is interesting.
Well, how do you feel about it?
How do I feel about it? It was fun. It was challenging at first because he was very, very young, very rambunctious, very ADHD, which normally would be good for me because I definitely suffered from that as well. But just we'd work together and we were just getting to know each other, and he was always wanting to to play or just do something that would distract you from the work. And
This is Michael, the actor.
Michael Mann, the actor. So when we would shoot together, it was always kind of a balance of trying to have fun and enjoy each other. But when he got his work done, because when we shoot, you shoot on different sides, and so he would get his work done, and then when the camera has to turn around and get the other side, he felt like he was free, he was done, because he didn't have to be on camera, so he's just like pulling on me, hanging on me, and so it was always this balance of trying to be able to focus with him, crawling all over me. But we learned, our relationship grew, and we learned to respect each other and to enjoy the scenes, and I took a lot from working with him because he's young, and it's essentially like part of the reason why I enjoy acting is because you get to play like a kid, it's make believe, and so having his energy around all the time keeps you excited, reminds you of why you're in this and what you're doing, and the way of just living in the moment. I've always said kids are the most interesting thing to me because they're always so present. They don't hold grudges, and they don't care about the future, and that's essentially what being an actor is about as far as finding moments. So I really grew to like Michael and Chase and Chuck's relationship and the whole storyline that Mark made up. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Michael/Chuck, he had that song, I forget the name of it, he sang quite a bit.
He is talented. He's
so lifted up by you.
He likes to write, he likes to sing, he writes songs, and he's just, he's going to be on Broadway, for sure.
I wanted to say something about that relationship.
Nothing's normal.
It's all so.
When, no offense, when that relationship started, I was like, and it became one of my favorite relationships as it went on. And I remember just every time you guys would come on, I'd be like, oh, this is so great. It's really become this really big, cool thing. And Chase is such a great guy for doing this for him. The kid has obviously, the rough issues with his folks. And I remember we were doing a scene on the porch, and I don't know why, but it's just one of my favorite scenes of the whole series. It was when
we pulled back on the porch.
Yeah, when we pulled away at the end, and you guys were just sitting there, just weren't even talking. You're just like